What's going on YouTube? This is MetallicTCG coming at you with a different type of video. So as we know from the channel uploads as well, and also my Twitch live streams over at twitch.tv/Metallicaerox, I've been really enjoying Shadowverse Champions Battle. I've dabbled in the Shadowverse card game a little bit before picking up the Switch game, and I've been having a lot of fun with it. It's very much like Hearthstone, but there's some differences here and there, mainly like the evolution mechanic and some of the other card interactions. Anyway, so I've been playing this game for quite some time, and we're actually pretty far into the story, but I've actually never done a deck profile on what we've actually been playing with to get to this point. So we're going to do that today. We're going to be doing a deck profile on the deck that pretty much has taken me up to Chapter 8, which is relatively close to the end of the game, and also just some of the plays of the deck as well. I want to be fully transparent that this deck, I didn't make it from scratch myself. There was a very similar build online. I don't remember the video, but if I could find it, I will link in the comment section below. And it was a very fun idea, just basically playing Swordcraft, having a lot of really cheap characters, and also passive ways to buff them and make them faster. So essentially that is what's going to be the deck itself. However, I have fine-tuned and changed it a little bit as new cards have been released into the game, and of course, just my general play style. This deck is actually pretty easy to build. You can easily build this within the first few chapters of the game. And when I'm saying few, I mean like the very early game. I have gotten to the point where I've unlocked the second expansion, but I haven't really delved too much into that when adjusting this deck. So there will be an updated version with this, but for now, we're going to go over this deck itself. So first, we're playing 3 copies of QuickBlader. It's a very good card to open up turn 1, be able to summon a creature with a 1/1 attack because of the storm, so it can attack the same turn as summoned. Pretty awesome. We have a lot of synergy with giving, you know, 1 play point creatures additional attack and other benefits, so it's really good to be able to have multiple copies of this. We are then also playing 3 copies of Vanguard, kind of the same way. This is essentially the same idea as QuickBlader. Unfortunately, he does not have Storm, but he also does have a little bit more defense, so he also has his own merit as well. We're playing 3 copies of Oathless Knight. Again, we're playing a lot of officers and commanders, so there's a lot of synergy with some of our cards and a lot of our amulets to buff these guys up. So dropping a 2/1/1 that also drops another creature is actually pretty good. So definitely something to consider, just to be able to get your board flooded and be able to get them buffs as well. We're playing 3 copies of Veteran Lancer. Again, it's a cheap officer at this point, 2 play points for a 2/2 with ward, which is really good. Honestly, especially with a deck like this, you want to make sure that some of your creatures do survive, especially in the combat. So having additional creatures with ward allows you to be able to have that kind of safe reassurance until they decide to go with the board wipe. Sorry about breaking up if you weren't feeling how much the dialogue. I mean, it's just for a demo, it was just too much, you know? Moving on. We're also playing 3 copies of Princess Vanguard. It's a 2 play point creature with a 1/3. On pawn of hitting the battlefield, you get to give a +1/0 to a 1-point allied follower. And now this could be pretty much any of the creatures that these dudes summons, or even the ones as well. But we often do run a lot of copies of Sea Queen Otohime, and all of her bodyguards, I believe, are 1 point, but we're gonna double check that as well. So you can be able to give them buffs too, because again, there are some pretty fun combinations we can do with Sea Queen Otahime. We're playing 3 copies of Fencer. Again, kind of the same idea. It's a 3/2/2, but when it drops onto the board, you can give a +1/+1 to an allied officer follow. We have a ton of officers in this deck, so we're always going to have a target to make this live, and just making your creatures a little bit bigger and likely to survive is really crucial. We also have 3 copies of Novice Trooper. Again, it's another officer card, so it has a lot of synergy with the deck in terms of boosting its power, but also the fact that it's a 2/2 with Storm for only 3 play points, really good, especially early on in the game. And it can be very clutch also when your opponents are pretty much dead. Yo! Yes! The one card that could save our ass, and we drew it. Let's go! We're playing 3 copies of Floral Fencer as well. Floral Fencer is actually a pretty solid card. It's a 4 play point for a 3 attack with 4 defense. And when you evolve it, you can also summon a knight and a steel-clad knight. So the fact that this is actually technically, you know, you drop 1, evolve, and to be able to get 2 more creatures, it's really good. Because again, there are also going to be more officers that do drop and just help buff them up with the abilities that we do have within the deck that we'll get to more when we get to the higher costing card. We're playing 3 copies of Rousing Step. Again, give +1/+1 to all allied followers. It's pretty solid. Just making your creatures a little bit more stronger at that point is really nice. However, this card can be replaced out with some other stronger cards in the second expansion, and I'm looking forward to see what we might be able to do to kind of give our deck a little bit more power. But this is still a pretty solid card overall, especially with the pretty easy means of getting it with the first expansion. We're playing 3 copies of Royal Banner. Again, this is kind of like where more of the synergy of the officer followers when they hit the combat play. So upon fanfare for this amulet, so consider this like a continuous spell or trap where they just stay on the field. You give a +1/0 to all allied officer followers, and then when an allied officer follower comes into play, it gives it a +1/0. So upon playing this card, it gives you the +1, but then when you're passively putting more down after activation, it still gives that benefit. So Royal Banner is a pretty good card. We're also playing 3 copies of Execution. Destroy an enemy follower or amulet. It's pretty straightforward. Honestly, so far from where we are currently in the game, 5 to destroy any creature or amulet with no restriction or conditions to be met. Pretty solid, so definitely a good copy of card to have. We're playing 3 copies of Ninja Master. Honestly, this actually might be something I might bump down to 2. Don't get me wrong, it's a pretty good card. It has Ambush, which means that an effect found on followers with Ambush cannot be targeted by attacks or abilities or followers, amulets, or spells controlled by the opponent, but they will lose Ambush after dealing damage with an attack as a result of an effect. So basically, this is kind of like one of the good cards where you can just, allow him to kind of just sit there and then strike. Ninja Master is not a bad card, but I think right now I probably could be able to upgrade with something different. And again, I'll have a future update video for this as well, so looking forward to that. We're playing 3 copies of Noble Knight. Again, kind of the same idea. With this, it's a 5 and it's a 3/3, but when he enters the battlefield, you get to summon 2 more knights. And again, they're all officers. So they're going to have some really unique synergy with cards such as, Rousing Step, the Commander Banner. There's so many other opportunities to be able to help give them an additional +1, and that does mean a lot because, again, we ought to get a lot of creatures on the board. Just buffing them up, even if just a little bit, it definitely adds up. We're playing 3 copies of Advent Blader. I believe this is actually from the second set. Yeah, this is from Darkness Evolved. So this is one of the cards when I immediately got, I'm like, okay, this has to go with the deck. Just because when it comes with this deck, one of the problems with that you're summoning so many creatures that you're often going to have low cards or even no cards in your hand at the start of your turn. So with this card, you play 5, it's a 3/4, and then when it enters the battlefield, you can add 2 random officer cards from your deck to your hand. So it's really good because it can be able to get things such as our QuickBlader or other officers that can be able to just have Storm. So it's a great way to help refill up your hand. So playing a few copies is pretty solid. We're also playing 1 copy of Arthurian Light. This card took me a while to get, but this is an amazing card. Whenever an ally follower that originally cost 1 play point comes into play, give it Storm, and at the start of your turn, summon a knight. And what do you think of that? A knight is a 1-point creature, so essentially you're getting a creature every turn that has Storm. And considering the fact that we also have things such as Royal Banner and a bunch of other cards to give those 1-point play creatures a +1/0, you're basically going to be able to get a creature with 2/1 every turn for the most part. And it's just really, really solid card to have. So I'm looking forward to be able to test this out. We're playing 3 copies of Sage Commander. Again, just more. Fanfare, when he enters the battlefield, you can give it a +1/+1 to all other allied followers. So again, just boosting up your creatures even bigger heights. And also being a 4/6 for 6 play points, honestly, it's not a slouch of a card. We're playing 3 copies of Sea Queen Otohime. So this is kind of like I guess you would say the boss monster, the heart and soul of the deck. Because when she enters the battlefield, she's a 6 play with a 3/4. Her stats are okay for the cost. But you get to summon Odahime's Bodyguards until your area is full. An area can hold up to 5 cards. So you basically drop this card. At most, you're going to get 4 other creatures. So you get an entire board. These things are not the most strong of creatures, but there is a few things that are really important to notice on the Odahime's Bodyguards. So they're 1 play point, so you have a bunch of cards that be able to give, 1 play point more power, which is awesome. And also even some defense too. And they're also officers too. So we have a lot of synergy with officers and 1-point play creatures getting a lot more benefits and buffs. So just dropping this in an instant board, if you have like Royal Banner, they all, get additional attack and defense. It's really good. Honestly, Sea Queen Otahime is definitely a powerhouse for the deck. She doesn't have any evolved, abilities, but still, she can definitely do a lot of damage by grouping a lot of creatures on the board. And kind of going back over to Arthurian Light, it's actually pretty good because if you have Arthurian Light, you can basically be able to give them all Storm, which is pretty good as well. Because again, Storm, you can just go for the damage to your opponent's life. It's amazing. We're playing 3 copies of Alwida's Command. Basically, you have to summon a pirate and a Viking, which is actually pretty important. So they're both officers, which is great. The pirate has a 2/3 with ward, so it protects us a little bit more. And also the Viking is going to be pretty much the opposite. So it's a 3-2, it's a 3, but we don't care about the play point cost, and it has Storm. So it's a great way to be able to get more damage in with this card. We're also playing one copy of Gilgamesh. So Gilgamesh, he's fine. Like, he's a love. You know, you play 8. He's a 5/4. Not, his stats are pretty decent. He also has Storm. That's the most important thing. Honestly, generally for the most time, when you do want to play this card, you're generally going to want to, you know, evolve it, because when you do, his stats change to 7/6. And again, with Shadowverse, each player starts with 20 life, and that's almost half. So just summon this, get over anything your opponent has, unless it has like Ward, and still do some damage. It's actually a fun fact, one of the cards we actually play is in the neutral craft. So again, Gilgamesh, he's pretty good. And that's the entire deck, honestly. There's a lot of fun, interesting design choices that also just give it a lot of unity and greatness to it. It's a really fun deck. It's not hard at all to build, especially for the majority of the deck, and you can still replace it with a bunch of other cards as well. Let me know down below what your guys' thoughts on Shadowverse as a whole, if you played it, if you've heard of it. And again, I can't stress this enough. This is pretty much one of the best card game console games I've ever played. And I'll be doing a full review, and I'll make sure to have that on the original channel, Metallicaerox, for a further depth and analysis review. And if you'd like to look forward to that video when it eventually comes out in the next 24 years, be sure to subscribe to the channel as well. We would love to have you a part of it. And again, I want to thank you all for listening to me talk about this deck. My name is MetallicTCG, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Take it easy.